Bon vespre a tothom.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Eva Pous. I'm coordinator of the Brussels Foreign Assembly and National Secretary of the Assembly, and I want to welcome you to this virtual activity. This event is being broadcast live on two YouTube channels, ANC Brew with simultaneous translation into English and International Assembly in Catalan. You'll find the links in the description of the event. You can ask questions of our guests from either of the chats. If possible, please state who you want to ask the question to. Today's interview, entitled Repression against Catalan Grassroots Movement, the case of the Spanish police Operation Judas versus peaceful activists, will close Catalan Week, a program of events organized over 10 days by the external assemblies to raise awareness abroad of various aspects of the political and cultural situation of Catalonia, such as human rights violations and repression. All of the links are in the description. First of all, for the non-Catalan audience, I want to clarify the concept of CDRs, which are key to understanding Operation Judas. CDRs are people's assemblies, usually comprising people from the same district or municipality, and they arose spontaneously in a non-hierarchical way to occupy the schools that would serve as the polling stations of the Catalonia self-determination referendum of 2017 between 29th September and the 1st of October, and keep them open. At first, they were called committees for the defense of the referendum, and once the result was known, they became known as committees for the defense of the Republic. The CDRs channel the demand from the grassroots activists for the result of the referendum on self-determination to be applied, i.e. for Catalonia to be granted independence. Their claim for this mandate is inspired by the principles of non-violent civil resistance. It's therefore an overwhelmingly peaceful movement, exercising basic rights such as freedom of expression, demonstration, and protest. All of these are rights widely recognized within any truly mature democracy. Within the dense network of associations in Catalonia, the CDRs coexist with other types of political and cultural associations, such as the Catalan Assembly, student associations, political parties, and so on. So why am I insisting that this is a peaceful movement? Because right from the outset, the Spanish state has set out to criminalize the independence movement by labeling it as violent, for example, blowing up images of marginal rioting in some demonstrations. The Spanish state has even asked the European Parliament for the European Union to include the CDRs in the catalogue of terrorist groups to be prosecuted internationally. Fortunately for everyone, they were not successful. By attempting to pass it off as a violent movement, the state attempts to justify before the Spanish populace and the international community the political and judicial pressure that it's applying to the Catalan independence movement, just as it's done before with other dissident movements. Just to give you an idea of the so-called terrorist activities of the CDRs, the most repeated action throughout Catalonia and even abroad has been to hang yellow ribbons on urban fixtures as a symbol of solidarity with Catalan political prisoners and to denounce political repression against the independence movement. So with that explanation, I'll introduce the topic of today's talk and our guests. On the 23rd of September 2019, 3 weeks before the publication of the verdict in the trial against the political and social leaders of the Catalan independence drive, a verdict that was published exactly 2 years ago, 9 CDR activists were arrested by the Spanish Civil Guard under the so-called Operation Judas and accused of terrorism. Today, we're honored to be able to talk to one of these detainees, Eduard Garzón, a pro-independence activist and a member of a CDR, and Eva Pous from the Solidarity Alert Lawyers Collective, and a member of the defense of these defendants, who are known popularly as the 23rd of September detainees. Good evening, Edu. Thanks so much for accepting our invitation. Thanks to you, Eva. It's a real pleasure to be here. Can you tell us, please, who Eduardo Garzón was until 22nd of September 2019? Well, Eduard is a father of two grown-up daughters. They're at university. I've been working all my life in social and health organizations. I'm just a normal citizen, a normal guy who wants a better future for his daughters. Okay, on the early morning of 23rd September 2019, you had a knock on the door. Who was it and what happened next? Well, they didn't exactly knock on the door. That would not be the right way to put it. The 23rd of September started a repressive media-based action with more than 500 civil guard police. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, they broke down the door of my house. 15 or 20 of these armed police burst into my house. They threw me to the floor. They twisted my arm behind my back. They put their knee on my neck, and they made it quite clear, just to make sure you understand what a media operation it was. The cameras and reporters arrived before the police. So that was the start of a violent attack. There was violence, threats, and it really felt like the police were really enjoying themselves. They were showing their complete spite towards someone who's done absolutely nothing wrong, and they wanted to involve the whole independence movement in false accusations of violence and terrorism. That operation was 20 days before the verdict on the political prisoners. Of course, the Spanish state knew that Catalan society would have mass mobilizations when that happened. And they wanted to scare the whole of Catalan society and make us all stay at home so that we wouldn't express our solidarity and our peaceful democratic will. Unfortunately, with 40 years of, well, this false democracy we've had in Spain, with our cause, the independence cause, we are realizing that we are still in the Franco era, in the dictatorship. After they burst into your house and searched your flat, you were put in pre-trial detention, right? What happened in prison? What happened to you? Well, 2 hours after they came to search the flat, the civil guard realized that they hadn't found any weapons or explosives or anything. They took me off to Madrid, accusing me of having explosives, and they took a Catalan independence flag and my laptop computer. Spent 4 days in the civil guard's cells, receiving all sorts of abuse. As I say, they knew I was completely innocent, but they were really enjoying just showing that they could treat me like that with total impunity. We have suffered violence that we can never forget. And basically, they were proving they could do anything they wanted to. They can handcuff you, they can put a hood on your head, reminding us of what they used to do to the Basque detainees. Let's talk about the government, and so on and so forth. Threats. And they really made you think that they could shoot you in the head and nothing would happen to them. It's violence, and they were really enjoying it. They were received the blessing of the Mr. Sanchez, who is currently the Prime Minister of Spain. He gave them his blessing. 4 days then in the cells. I think I lost 10 kilos out of tension, wondering what my daughters and my parents were thinking. Fortunately, after 72 hours, I was able to speak for 5 minutes with Eva, our lawyer from Solidarity Alert. And that's the first time that I really was able to pull myself together and be strong and realize I was not alone in this. That was the point at which I could really feel that I could overcome the situation, I could be strong, and that this repression was not going to be successful. Then we understood the solidarity and support of people all over the country. Solidarity Alert were working tirelessly to help us all. And they said we'd probably get 1 or 2 years in jail. Fortunately, it was only 3 months, but only 3 months thanks to the work done by the mobilization and the work of the lawyers from the Solidarity Alert, and the fact that everybody was mobilizing for us. What surprised you the most when you came home after being held in jail? What I'm still surprised about, and this is 2 years on, is the solidarity, the number of people that don't even know you and are telling you you're not alone. It really makes you feel that there is a reason in your life to just press ahead and show that we are, we're really fighting for a cause, for our country. Good evening, Eva. Thank you so much for being here. Now, you're a member of Alerta Solidària, Solidarity Alert, a group of lawyers who habitually defend political dissidents in Catalonia. Could you tell us briefly who you are and what is your mission? Hello, good evening. Well, before I start, let me say how grateful I am that you organize these events, these international events. We know that we have to really stick together. We have to build up our strength. We have to get the message out across. We know things are very complex from a media point of view because of the implications. So let me tell you a few words about what Solidarity Alert is about. We're not only a group of lawyers, we're also a political organization. It was born in 2001, a representation of the 11th of September 2001. So we've been going for 20 years this year. And we realized that we needed to reach a consensus over how to deal with the political dissidents. One was to set up, to take up the baton of the Catalan Patriots organization. That was an organization in Franco's time which provided financial support to people in exile and moral support and political activities, and had a series of, if you like, politicized lawyers to help people suffering repression for political reasons. Things were different for people who were not accused of political crimes back in the day. It seems amazing, but the difficulties that we sometimes face, we explain political repression, we explain the cases. A lot of people say, oh my God, what about the social concept of justice? This rather rosy view that we have, that people have a clear idea of right and wrong. Not just justice that's blind and deaf. but we know that our political system follows and the legal system follows very specific interests and vested interests. And the important thing is to explain why this repression is happening and how we can get results. So we're a political organization, as I say, 20 years old this year, and our work is to help anybody who is accused of crimes. But the most important job is what we do in the streets rather than in the law courts, which is bring political content, bring people out of the shadows, getting people to speak up, so that we can help to bring people's stories to light. And our job, and I don't know whether we do it or not, but is to help to counteract the effects that the repression is trying to achieve, which is to keep people quiet, to set out our political views.
How is it that the police can accuse Eduard and his colleagues in the CDR of such serious crimes with such flimsy and convincing evidence? The Estelada, the independent flag, well, it's rather sad, really, because there are situations which could even make us laugh. But we are talking of one of the most serious crimes in the penal code, in the criminal code. And unfortunately, in the case of Eduard and the others on the 23rd September, it's not the first, but hopefully it will be the last. But if we look at the precedent, it's unlikely. And if CDRs are a terrorist organization, as they say it is, well, they will attempt to criminalize the whole group and many, many others. The civil guard acts with a clear political aim, a political interest. And if we look at past, if you like, articles in the newspapers, they're accused of sending notes, threatening notes, but nobody went to the Central Criminal Court for that, the Audiencia Nacional. A gentleman in Burgos, who's an activist of Vox, an extreme right party, started making severe accusations, threatening accusations against left-wing militants, and they weren't sent to the Central Criminal Court, but the civil guard has power, and it's the power to attempt to eliminate political, if you like, opponents. And the 23rd September occurred very shortly before the verdict of the trial, and it was due to come out that same week or the following one. Well, what was the whole purpose of this? To frighten people and to stop them going out into the streets to protest. But we, Catalan working people, are rebels. We have the tradition of resistance, and we do not believe it was terrorism. And a few days later, there was an occupation of the airport, if you like, roadblocks organized by the CDRs and others in protest. As a lawyer, what irregularities have you detected with all the detentions, the arrests, if you like, searches and everything to do with them being held at the police cells and the Audiencia Nacional? Well, it's a clear example of how not to run a criminal case. And particularly a case like this, where people are facing very severe sentences. And in that case, in cases like this, if you like, the whole due process should be scrupulously clean. And what we found, as Eduardo has said, they entered his home at 5 a.m., but he was not read his rights. He was held in his home with the threat of a weapon until 10 o'clock, and not only had the civil guards not allowed an interview with his lawyers, my client, but they didn't even tell the appropriate, if you like, entities, if you like, the bar authorities of his arrest. And we feel that you cannot carry out a search in the absence of a lawyer. So, and apart from these two, the arrest of the others was not even communicated. They were taken out of their territorial area. They were taken to Madrid, and they could not contact their lawyers. It was only after 2 or 3 days, and the law clearly states that it is after 2 hours arrest you are entitled to consult a lawyer. So we found that despite the fact that another detainee in the same case, well, they were provided with court-appointed lawyers in Madrid, and oh no, but there's been no request. And then we found out that, well, things hadn't gone as supposed. So then we come to the Central Criminal Court, the Audiencia Nacional, and lawyers were treated with certain hostility. And anyway, there was someone understood us speaking Catalan and looked at us askance, and well, we were just doing our job. And then we carried out the visits to the prison, and the prosecutor there had access to all the documentation, and it was under, if you like, the secrecy, court secrecy, and we had no access to that. Parties have no access to that. But in the case of Eduardo, the prosecutor was said at all the time. As I have said in the rest of cases, we are asking for him to be sent on to jail on remand, right, to pretrial detention. And there was no argument or clear reasons given. And we asked access to the documentation because a law does actually provide us with that right to know what they were being accused of. We carry an appeal, and we are told that and the court said that the prison was not justified, but they were not released then. They were not released. And despite that, they maintained them in pretrial detention. The judge repeated that. We again find that we're still in pretrial detention. And then finally, they were freed. We were proven right. And the investigating magistrate released them and set them on bail. And then, quite apart from all that, there were all these leaks, despite the fact that it was under, if you like, under the case was at that time under court secrecy. But there were many leaks. We said, no, this cannot happen. This weakens their defense. And they basically, the many newspapers simply wrote down what they were told by the court and by the civil guard. And despite it being under court secrecy, we found there was flagrant violation, infringement of the rights to defense due to these leaks. And in this particular case, when the court secrecy was lifted, in one specific well-known newspaper, which is not close to the independence movement, La Vanguardia, they left, if you like, the watermark and on a document, and this document came from the person who was if you like, setting up the case. Well, now we are, if you like, stating that we cannot have a neutral instruction when right from the outset there is infringement of the detainees' rights. And all these lies will gradually trickle down and influence public opinion. Edu, 2 years after arrest, the trial is about to start. How has your life changed in these 2 years of waiting, and how are you currently facing up to the situation? Well, it's changed completely, I would say. The situation at work changes, your family changes, your friends are concerned, very concerned, and it's like a roller coaster. When you think that, okay, things are back to normal, then suddenly, like last week, we had to go to court, knowing full well that this whole case, with a lack of proper judicial guarantees, and the process continues in the Audiencia Nacional of the Central Criminal Court. We are living in a state where judges are appointed not because of their merits or their judicial proficiency, but because of their political leanings. Today, it is clear that Prime Minister Sanchez and the Socialist Party and the Popular Party, the right-wing party, have agreed to name to appoint new judges to the Court of Auditors and the Constitutional Court. Now, that should not really happen in a normal democratic state. It's not the way of going about things. It is very difficult to find normality in your life, normalcy in your life as you had before, with this case hanging over your head, even they have no sound proof. It's all a pack of lies, as we have seen in many other cases, or the ones we have seen in the cases in the litigation against Catalan politicians, many of them sentenced to 13 years, up to 13 years imprisonment, accused of violent activities when the Catalan independence movement is sovereign, peaceful, and non-violent. Anything can happen, but again, it's very, very difficult to find normality.
And why do you think they chose you as the scapegoat and not somebody else? Well, every day I think, and I'm more and more convinced that this is not an individual case, because I was mobilized and I continue to be mobilized. I'm just one more member of Catalan society. This could have happened to anybody, to any of us. What we were talking about before as a politically motivated attack, which is not worthy of a proper democratic state. It means that they're trying to hit all of these grassroots organizations, ANC, Omnium, hit the CDRs, because this movement is a spontaneous grassroots movement which emerged from what happened on the 1st of October on the referendum day, what we'd been through in September, and it was outside the political control of the powers that be. And I'm more and more convinced as time goes by that the states drive, their motivation was to basically scare anybody who was planning to be part of this CDR movement into submission. To what extent can this process be has changed your beliefs? This political persecution. I think, well, I don't think my views have changed. I'd say I'm more determined than ever. We've had a really awful time, and no one can deny that. But really, we've seen so much help and so much support from everybody. This is what I've felt. Us and our families have received such a lot of care and support and solidarity. I think we found one more reason in our lives, which is important enough for us to continue and push ahead. Unfortunately, we've been the protagonists, but we've managed to turn the situation of fear and punishment around. We've turned it on its head, and to give arguments, not only political arguments, but directly involved, that we need to push forward. We need to bring about a sea change in Catalan society. We need to change the political discourse and make it really democratic. In your opinion, what lessons can Catalan society in particular, and European society in general, draw from political repression against grassroots independence in Catalonia? Lessons, I don't know what lessons, but it's not just a question of telling people about our cause and the politically driven behavior of the Spanish state, but Europe needs to know that Spain is not a democratic state. And without this democracy, transparency, independence of its institutions, separation of powers, this is not what Europe wants to reflect in its constitution. You can't have a state who reacts in a way that is not democratic, like they did in the UK, for example, with Scotland, that was totally democratic. It cannot approve of this kind of behavior from a member state. The judges are not fair-minded, they're not independent, there's no separation of powers. Over 4 years after this process, the Spanish state still doesn't have a political project for dealing with this. Whatever political party is in power in Spain, their response is always the same: punishment and repression. And Europe shouldn't accept this. Europe should do something. The EU should be doing something to change this situation. Thank you. Eva, now turning to you. This trial is currently underway. The number of defendants has risen from 9 to 13. Some of the partners of the people detained initially. What's especially striking from the point of view of the defense? Well, actually, the trial is not underway as yet. They're closing the pre-trial discussions, and accusations are still being able to be formulated by the public prosecutor. They're still preparing the elements, so they're deciding on the elements for the accusation. The next thing we might end up with is that when they have a summary, you cannot appeal that. But at least we will have the chance to say if we disagree with certain formal aspects. We don't have a written accusation yet. I think that will be the next blow that we will be receiving. And this is not something we'll know in a couple of months. It'll probably take a year. In terms, procedural terms, we could write a book on this. There's so much material there. Something we have been very surprised about is that when the public prosecutor's office sent a written notification about these 13 people, they asked us to follow a number of steps for something that we hadn't been notified about until the date. And this is where alarm bells started going off. We talk about leaks to the press, for example. The media that are close to the civil guard and the criminal court, so the 3,500 phones had been tapped. And that was quite peculiar because phone taps are something you have to really justify for very good reasons, because they violate privacy rights. For example, when there are spying operations. And this process that they have just sort of plonked this on our desks all of a sudden at the last minute. This really, I think, is this dung heap, really, that the criminal court has. They're just going to keep scooping out more and more. There's totally unfounded investigations and these totally introspective accusations they're making, just following somebody's car or basically bugging their phones. This is what they're doing. To what extent can this process be considered a case of so-called lawfare? Well, I don't know if that's what we're looking at. I don't think it's lawfare as such. It's not a war. I think we're just talking about major failings in a supposedly democratic state. This is nothing new in Spain. The problem of the Catalan people is that some people are showing a lot of solidarity, like our friends from the Basque country. They've been through all this before, and people who defend human rights, like former Judge Garzón. Trade unions and all sorts of support networks are really coming into force. And there's been a third case where they've been trying to attack the lawyers who are defending Basque detainees. We were afraid that people might turn away because they didn't feel at all involved in our struggle. And if we look at the Spanish state and the way that they do things, the dirty war will continue because they don't know how to act in any other way. They don't know how to play the game from a democratic point of view. They don't know the rules. We're looking at cases, for example, Poland. Poland has just stated they don't recognize and acknowledge the power of the EU courts. If you look at the terrible things that basically, the EU has given all this money to Turkey to basically turn Turkey into a prison camp so that all these people don't come into the EU, or Crimea or Hungary. There are many different countries that where the EU is turning a blind eye, and there's a lot of things that we could say about the EU, and I think it's high time that the EU started really standing up for human rights, because a lot of other places are going to be facing this kind of problem, because when if there are no let's just say backstops to keep power in check, if there are no checks and balances, then things just get worse and worse, and this can happen to many other countries. Now, faced with a case in which the law is being manipulated along with abuse of the power of the judiciary and the police to prosecute political dissidents, what legal avenues are available to the 23rd of September detainees to demand justice and reparation? And how long can this trial go on? Well, these are the million-dollar questions, aren't they? It's very difficult, because despite everything that I've said up to now, I think that mobilization in the streets is the right way. If all the Catalan-speaking territories and our neighbors stand up for us and help to continue to try to stop us becoming independent, what's behind all of this case, I don't know how far this will go. I think we need to focus on the political objective, and I think things might be different if there were a more politically solid approach from outside. But if we're not given the chance to talk about the important things, political cases tend to interfere in the normal legal processes. I'm sure that we will receive support, but we've got 13 people, 12, we don't know. They're all a part of the same accusation. And they might leave one person out. That's very typical in Spain, so that at the end, then they can say, oh, you see, we've been very lenient. And I think we need to be very watching this very closely, because a lot of other people are going to find themselves in this kind of situation. And the future of our people, I think, will be affected by this. But we need to send out the sign that we will not be bowed. We will not let this repression scare us out of what we want to do. We will not turn back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We know that there are a great many lawsuits open against grassroots independence activists for different protests since the 2017 referendum. To what extent can the case of the 23rd of September detainees, as Edu said, be understood or seen in the wider view of a case framed within a general case brought against grassroots independence? What is your view? Well, I would add something to that. If we look at the 23rd of September, let us remember that the case of Tamara and Adri started off as a case against the CDRs, and that's in the framework of the Spanish state requesting the European Parliament to treat CDRs as a terrorist organization. It's not exactly the same, but they were unlucky that Adri went off to Brussels, and seeing that if they were going to have to ask for an international letter of request, I think they would have really not been successful at all. Everyone would have laughed at them. And maybe the prosecutor's office is pretty irritated and angry. And again, they were, requesting people to say, okay, these were just these were disorders. Remember, Eva says you can ask questions on the chat, both in the Catalan version or in the English version. We seem to have nothing right now. I do have a question for Edu, yet another question on his support group. You have a support group. Tell us what is the importance of a support network for those who are suffering political repression. In what way does it assist you and help you? Well, I know all the repressive causes of the independent movement. Now, creating a group of support, a group of people who willingly provide backing to those who are the victims of repression. In our case, Eva was telling me, when I was actually in prison, there was an assembly in Sabadell. More than 200 people were willing to back each and every one of us. Out of the 7 people who were in jail, there were at least 10 or up to 15 people who, right from the outset, were there to help those who are object of reprisal, their families, their parents, their loved ones. And the first visit I got when I was in jail, well, from my parents, and I was worried what was happening, what was being said out there in the media. And when they came, they said, you cannot imagine the amount of people who are by your side. And for us, I feel proud that you are in jail, they said. And how important it is to turn the situation around. What does the Spanish state want? To frighten and scare a whole society? Well, they managed to attain the opposite, to show that with this, that if the state continued to repress us, then people would show more and more solidarity. And the independence cause is certainly not going to wither away. It's going to continue. And these groups of support actually took care of matters such as who's going to pay the mortgage, who's going to pay the rent. Well, thanks to the solidarity shown by these groups, that was taken care of. That was taken care of. Trips to Madrid and all that was done. And when we left jail, and as I say, we found ourselves in this semi-normal situation I described earlier. But I, as someone who has been the victim of repression, I have to show gratitude and thank all these people and all these groups and with their selfless help. And I tell the state, did you wish to frighten people? No, we're going to go from strength to strength, explaining our cause, and we're certainly not going to recoil in fear. And this is the whole purpose of these groups of solidarity, to turn the situation on its head, to turn the situation of repression on its head. Thank you. From your group, you've helped many, many activists who cannot pay a decent defense. There's a question for Eva. How do you fund and finance the defense of people who have no resources? Well, Well, there are many people who wish to pay their defense. Some who have a group of support behind them, a support group behind them, like Eduard said, and wish to fund their defense and help them financially. And we, as a Solidarity Alert, aim to establish if you like, fees criteria which are not prohibitive at all, to so that to allow people to continue fighting and struggling. And often solidarity is there, solidarity from people who by saying, okay, it's not, I'm not a person who is being repressed. Maybe I don't fully agree with the political ideas of the person who has been an object of reprisals, been the subject of reprisals, but we do have to help them. And we're not just talking of the funding defenses. We're talking of paying paying bail bonds, or helping someone who is the breadwinner of the family, and that family maybe who's going to pay for their livelihoods, funding trips to prison, helping them with the amount of money that, if you like, the stipend which prisoners are allowed to have. Also providing, if you like, if you like, support funds, and above all, repression should not stop us. So that is why there is this solidarity and financial help which flows from these support groups and people who do that willingly. We have another question for Eva, in fact. A person who is arrested for participating in a pro-independence demonstration, what should they know? What should they do? Well, I'll talk about Països Catalans, the Catalan-speaking countries. But the first thing you must be clear in your mind is that we will not declare or make statements in the police station without the presence of a lawyer. And whenever there's a demonstration, a massive demonstration, we send recommendations via Twitter, Telegram, and other social media, and via support groups, so that people be very clear in their minds what they should and should not do. If you are arrested, you should know what your rights are, that you can have a right to designate a lawyer, and that you can telephone somebody to send you someone who you can trust. And in any case, whether it is a lawyer from Solidarity Alert or a court-appointed lawyer, we say never make statements in the police station. Do not allow photographs being taken of tattoos or piercings, because we do never allow them to look at your mobile. They have no right, the police have no right to enter into your various social media groups or to enter into the contents. We have a right to communicate our arrest. And when you see an arrest taking place, ensure that that person can give their names and surnames, so that we can tell the lawyers that this person has been arrested, and also gather witnesses of the arrest, telephones, names, so that in the case of a court case, we can get in touch with these people who will be essential, and their witness will be essential. So two lines of advice, one for the people who are being arrested and those also who witnessed them. Thank you very much. I don't know whether all the questions are the right ones, but people are not really rushing to ask questions. But to conclude, I have a question for both of you and Eva. From your perspective, what real possibilities are there for genuine democratizing reform to the Spanish police and judiciary taking place within a reasonable time frame? And otherwise, how do you think it is possible to enter so-called kangaroo courts and political persecution in Catalonia? Edu, you want to kick off? Well, okay, I'll go first. Well, sincerely, right now, I think there are no possibilities outside independence for Catalonia and the Catalan-speaking countries. Judges are not changing their spot, so to speak. And within this democracy, so-called progressive parties, or claim to be progressive, maintain a corrupt monarchy and defend it. There's no sign that this trend is going to change. And what they have, what Catalan society has shown is that thanks to our determination and resolve, we have managed to tear away the genuine nature, the true nature of this democracy, so-called democracy. The only clear sign is to continue our mobilization, to continue condemning the Spanish state internally and internationally, and attempting to fight for the attainment, the achievement of independence in a democratic and non-violent way. That's the only way to ensure that the Spanish state changes, to show that everyone outside Catalonia, this can be achieved. And that is what where we're at. And that is what we wish to do. At least that is my view. That is what I have attempted to do in my modest way. I think we do have to achieve that. Eva, what is your view? Well, I think that the first thing we should achieve is to sort of make a clean social sweep, so to speak, and people who feel that something very important has been burgled and robbed from the families. We come from different backgrounds. We have gone through a dictatorship of 40 years and a transition which didn't really allow us to do tabula rasa, to wipe the slate clean. But okay, democracy came along, but the high officials, the judges, the judiciary remained the same. They were inherited from the dictatorship. So from the viewpoint of the state, and apart from Catalonia, Galicia, part of Andalusia, and the Basque Country, there's no real democratic tradition in Spain. And if socially we do not move forward, if there's no pressure, social pressure, they won't really move. They need social pressure to change. And when we see that there are debates on yes to the death penalty, or sort of, if you like, life imprisonment for crimes, well, and applauding tougher policing, and if you like, cutting back political rights, or that people who are on strike should be, if you like, repressed, well, we wonder to what extent change is possible. And when there is this social regression, it is going to be very difficult. Well, we could do many things. From a judicial point of view, we could stop the judicial career being the preserve of those who have the means. We should ensure that access be given to more people who do not have not wealthy people, people with wealthy background. The ombudsman could have a greater role in and we could ensure that international organizations, which are perhaps do have, if you like, a position above the Spanish state, although Spanish state doesn't like that, and they could be, if you like, tougher. But for me, to put it in a nutshell, I think that we need internationalist help, but I think that I want my country to have this quality of social progress and have the same rights as other peoples in France, Italy, Poland, and Russia are struggling for. Thank you very much. We've been for an hour now, so there seem to be no more questions.
So thank you very much indeed to our guests, Eduard Garzón and Eva Pous, for their time. We know they don't have a lot of time right now. It's worrying and there's a lot of work to do. I'd also like to thank our two interpreters, Mike and Felix, for being our voices on the English channel, and our technicians, Martí and Albert, for their IT support for these two live broadcasts. And Julia, our colleague, who's been keeping an eye on the questions. In the description section, we'll leave you some information about Catalan Week and the resistance funds for the 23rd of September detainees support group and the Solidarity Alert group of lawyers, as well as information surrounding the case. I'd also like to thank all the external assemblies for the extraordinary effort they've made during this Catalan Week, and which they constantly make from abroad to publicize the situation of democratic deficits in Catalonia. Since the repression of the 2017 self-determination referendum, Catalonia's autonomy has been increasingly curtailed, and it's becoming merely symbolic. Its minority language is increasingly minoritized institutionally and is unprotected, and its population is increasingly defenseless, at the mercy of a state that is fast returning to an authoritarianism that we believed was a thing of the past. It clearly isn't. In connection with today's event, people living in or around Brussels can still visit the exhibition of the artist Santiago Sierra called Political Prisoners in Contemporary Spain at the Catalan delegation in Europe until the 29th of October. This exhibition denounces how the political persecution of dissent has been a constant since the Franco regime. Furthermore, next Tuesday, 19th of October, at 6:30 p.m, in the same Catalan delegation in Brussels, we will be screening the film by director Dan Ortínez called In the Early Morning. The film is in Catalan with English subtitles and tells the story not only of Eduard, but also of all the other 23rd September detainees and the people who provide them with this invaluable support. You have all the information in the description below. So all that remains for me to do is to ask you to like this event if you found it interesting, and subscribe to our social media channels to stay up to date with our activities. There are the links in the description. So thank you very much for your attention, and we hope to see you all again really soon.